This conference will now be recorded.
All right, go ahead and call the meeting to order. We could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Ackerman, Mr. Graham.
Here.
Mr. Lefevre.
Here.
Mr. McKinnon.
Here.
Mrs. O'Rourke. Here.
All right, we have a quorum tonight. Any conflict with any of the items that were presented tonight? If you find out that you do have a conflict, let me know as soon as you are aware of it. Any changes to the agenda tonight? No changes. Move on to the consent agenda. If we have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion.
A second.
I'll second.
All right, are you all ready? Have a roll call.
Mr. Ackerman, Mr. Graham.
Yes.
Mr. Lefevre.
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Rourke. Yes.
All right, that's approved. We also have the recent drafts of minutes and reports in your file. We had nobody sign up for public comment tonight. Thank you. And we're going to go ahead and do the presentation of the audit, so you don't have to sit here the rest of the meeting. And the floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much. I know I'm going to try not to look at those two monitors on the side there. I do typically stand when I do my presentation, so thank you all for having me here this evening. My name is Jenny Blocker. I'm a partner with Benning Group. I'm very thankful to be here in August this year and not in December, so that's a great sign. The audit actually went very smoothly this year. I was just back here chatting with Sally and felt like it was the same on her end too, so I'm glad that we were able to get that moving along this year a little bit smoother than last year, for sure.
Thank you for this. You know, I mean, I know that you worked your tail off to get it ready earlier than last time, and so I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. It did help. I know when I was here last year, I did beg to see if anybody knew of any accounting people in the area. I'm fortunate to say, knock on some wood here, that we were actually able to do some hiring in our firm this year. We had some folks that a little unexpectedly actually came back to the area after having interned for us several years ago. So it was great to have them back on the team. And of course, the more folks we can get involved in the process, the easier the whole thing goes. So yes, much smoother this year than last year. So, all right, and I'm just going to hit the high points in the audit. It's a riveting report. I hear that it's had some glowing reviews from Sally too. So I'm not sure I can live up to the hype here, but I will try my best. We're just going to hit the high points starting on page 15 of your report. Actually, I'm sorry. Yes, page 16. These are the consolidated financial statements for the village as a whole. So the business type activities are the water, sewer, garbage activities, governmental activities will be everything else. And so this is a good way to see an overview of the village as a whole that we'll run through here real quickly. Just again, hitting some of the high points. The cash position of the village actually improved by about $1.1 million from 2021 to the end of 2022. Always a good sign when you have your cash going up at the end of the year. And very few activities that really changed very dramatically during the year in the rest of the balance sheet here. Your debt as a whole, long-term debt, did decrease by about $400,000 from year to year. So that's using some of the cash coming in and paying off some of the debt according to your normal payment schedules. Certainly nothing wrong with that. As an overall position, at the very bottom of your report, the governmental activities were showing a net position or net equity, essentially, in those funds of about $7.1 million this year. That's an improvement of almost, or a little over $850,000 over the prior year. Likewise, with the business type activities, that's been running a deficit for a few years now based on the contracts and the water system improvements and everything that was, they're now Four Rivers, was Rock River Water. I have to remind myself of their new name every time I run through this. The deficit in that fund actually decreased by about $575,000 this year. So you're moving in the right direction, and assuming everything stays the same in 2023, I expect that to be back to a positive position at the end of the year this year. The next page is more of the income and expense. As you well know, a lot of expenses across the board everywhere for all villages are increasing due to inflationary pressures and that sort of thing. You were not really any different from that regard. The general government expenses, I'm looking right up here at the very top. General government expenses increased by about $117,000 over the prior year. Highway and streets increased by about $36,000 over the prior year. Culture and recreation increased by about $35,000 over the prior year. And your water and sewer actually increased by about $264,000 for expenditures over the prior year. The good news is you had some additional funding coming in to help to offset those increases. So up at the very top, top line in the middle there for operating grants and contributions is showing $203,000. $200,000 of that is some of those ARP funds from that were coming in as a result of COVID. So that definitely did help to offset some of the impact of the increase in expenditures. Down along the left-hand side over here, we do have all of the different tax positions for the village, and almost across the board, we were seeing increases there as well. Most significantly in the sales and use tax, increased by about $220,000 from year to year. So as I said, overall, net position increased by about $853,000 for your governmental funds and about $575,000 for the water and sewer funds. Beyond that, there's several pages of detail, and this is where it gets really exciting. And this is the part I'm going to let you just do your homework and read this really exciting report. We do have several pages of detail, and really probably the most informative is going to be starting back on page 55, I believe it is in your report, 56 actually. There's going to be several pages of schedules that show actual results versus budgeted figures, and that's going to be on a fund-by-fund basis, and that's going to be on a lot more detailed level than those financials that I went through just now in summarized form. So if you really want to see any of the detail behind these figures, I would definitely point your attention back there. Like I said, there's several different pages, and certainly the general fund does get into quite a bit of detail, so that's a really great place to go if you're looking for any of the detail there. Any questions on the audit report itself? All right, clear as mud, love it. That's the standard we go by there. So I have a couple of other letters that you would have also received with your audit documentation. I'm going to start with the one that has a cover sheet on it that says management letter. And this is very much the same as what you have received in prior years. Essentially, as part of the audit, we are required to evaluate the internal controls of the village, and we are required to tell you if we encounter anything that we consider to be a deficiency. And just like as in prior years and as in many of the villages that we work with, you do have an issue with segregation of duties because you don't have an unlimited budget here where you can hire as many financial people as you'd like. And I have been talking with Sally, and there are some additional folks in the accounts payable department now. Great move, and definitely something that's going to help relieve her and her responsibilities. At the same time, unfortunately, just that one person is not enough for us to get over this hump. But again, this is a very common comment that we have for virtually all of the villages that we work with. The other item that I need to call your attention to is what we refer to as our governance letter. You'll also see this referred to as an audit committee letter. Essentially, this is a letter of all of the communications that we as an auditing firm are required to give to you as the governing board of the organization at the end of the year. Goes through some of the highlights of what the audit is and what our responsibility is, what your responsibility is, and to highlight some of the larger issues that we have for you. One of the things that we do highlight is the fact that we did make some adjustments as part of the audit. And there were a few items that we did not adjust for because they weren't, in our perspective, large enough that they would make a significant impact on the village. And those are highlighted in the schedules in the very back. And so just running through those very quickly, these are, again, items that you would have seen in years past as well. There's an estimate of utility billings because of the date that everything is cut off at the end of the month. And so there were 3 days that just fall outside of the billing cycle that were not billed at the end of the year. Had you billed those, it would have been an extra $9,500 worth of revenue. Again, not a significant enough amount for us to get excited about. Likewise, the allowance for bad debts or for uncollectible accounts that's out there on the general ledger at the end of the year is a little bit overstated, but again, these are based off of estimates, so our calculation of the estimate may be a little bit different than your calculation of the estimate, not anything that we got really excited about. Likewise, accrued payroll is slightly understated compared to what we've calculated and what you've calculated by about $4,000. And accounts payable was a little bit different based off of what was on the books versus some of the schedules that we were looking at by about $1,900. So we do an accumulation of those at the very bottom with the totals from the financial statements, and you can see that all of the figures there, if we're looking at them proportionate to the financial statements, are less than 0.5% of what's on the financial statements. So that's part of what goes into our analysis where we say, you know what, it's really small enough, we don't need to adjust everything down to the dollar. Otherwise, we'd be here until December and we don't want that again. So other than that, are there any questions at all about the audit in general? All right, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mine crash like that earlier.
Yeah, you have, usually I make sure they are 2:30 meeting, I try to do it. Download one update right now, because I haven't had it a lot more.
All right, can we move on to Public Works Committee?
All right, we have one item on the agenda, it's the Verizon Tower lease. Shannon, if you speak a little more about that, long story short, as getting into this, Verizon is looking to renew their lease with us, and then go ahead.
Yeah, you'll see there have been some emails circulated around for those members of the board that were present when we had refurbished the old tower here on East Main in 2015. I had reached out to the friendlies of Verizon, US Cellular, and some of the other carriers in an effort to solicit water tower space for rental agreement. Verizon jumped in and did a facility search and found that tower, we were actually asking them to go on the new tower because it was built lease ready and the appurtenances for conduit runs and things like that were built in with that project. But when they did their proximity study or what have you, they found that they really wanted to be on East Main Street, right here in the middle of town. That was more lucrative for them and the elevation was all they needed. So we went through the process. That was the first one for us, but I had been through it a couple other times and we landed a successful lease. We landed a successful lease agreement, but to reiterate to the board, at the time when we were dealing with any carrier wanting to come, we required them to post escrow so that our legal and our engineering expenses were not out of pocket for the village. So we did a really good job. We have a really good lease in place. Somewhat out of the blue, Verizon has sent this email to Kelly and myself, stating that they were revising their long-term portfolios and were looking to see which sites they needed to keep and have long-term retention. And it was during my absence, but I was in email communication and we had set the date of my return week that I would get back to them to review, which after review, seeing that their new offer is less than we currently have accepted, I quickly responded via email that we wouldn't be making any movement at all before the board and the legal experts had a chance to go through it. And as I was reviewing it a little bit deeper, when we got to our third page, we have an escalator for extended rent. So long, try to shorten it up here. In 2016, when we signed and close that window, the tower was getting rehabbed in 15. So we negotiated that they wouldn't land on the tower until it was painted and completed and everything. And we have a really good existing lease, and it started at $18,000, and then it had an incremental increase as we went, and I believe it went in 5-year.
It's 5-year increments,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, 5-year
5
increments.
years, so we're in the middle of another 5 years, so we don't have the need to renegotiate with them right now.
And I didn't want to speak too much about it, I want to put it myself, I really want to put it in the legal hands and the mayor's hands as well, to basically say what Mary Bank just said, that we have an existing lease, thank you very much. And if you would like to open the terms of the lease, send us an escrow check that's basically open-ended. I mean, I don't remember what we did last time, Mary, we can look back, it's either 2,500 or 5,000.
I think it was 5.
And in their ask, and I can't recall off the top of my head who I emailed it to, that in the fine print, there's some things that we normally wouldn't accept either. It says they can add equipment, and as you all well know, I'm not a fan of adding equipment without a cost and without engineering and research. So I wouldn't be in favor, myself, from the public works side, to allowing them to add equipment. The existing lease is very cut and dry and all that language. And maybe this is just something they do, or maybe they don't have the customer, I don't know, or, don't mean to be brash, but I don't really care. I echo what the mayor had said, that we have an existing lease, and it was a long-term, open-ended lease that goes in those 5-year increments. And just to please the board, the number, basically, it started at 18,000, it's gone up, I think we're basically probably getting 20,000.
19.8.
Yeah, 19.8 right now, and their shoot from the hip number is 14.7, so it's going backwards and then wanting more abilities. Obviously, it's a good revenue. Again, just please the board, we split it. A third goes to the water utility, a third goes to the police department, and a third goes to community development. So revenue is good, but just to make the board aware, and just the hit date for our public works committee meeting is later this week after this board meeting. I simply responded to the asker that we would be going to board and have to have legal and board representation, so.
So the main thing I think we need to look at for this is, we're not in a hurry to change it. And the second thing is, we need to look at, from their perspective, how can they terminate the lease early? So we need to look at the language in there for early termination. How soon can they terminate it? Is it a 60-day notice? Is it a year notice, 90-day notice? Because they could send that to us and then we don't have an agreement. So we have to look at that. And then we need to look at, all right, if they have that time frame for notice, we do need to respond to them in a reasonable amount of time and tell them that we will look into it and see what they're proposing as to whether parts of it or all of it seem to be reasonable. And maybe they want to add some equipment. Well, we could say, okay, you can add equipment, but we're not going to lower the price, or whatever we need to do. So I
When does
think
the current lease expire? Is it now or?
2025, 2026.
It does have a 60-day
Well,
termination.
we signed it in 2015, but
Oh, 15.
they didn't really start until, what was it, April? I think it was when they started paying, because that's when it was up.
December, I think.
But it was December of 2015, I think. That's when we signed it.
I want to say, they had it up there for a long time before we started getting payments.
We weren't getting the payments timely in the beginning,
Right,
and
we had to
Mary
go
got involved.
So it started in 15, no? The payments?
No,
I'd have to double check that. I think they were in 16.
Yeah, it would have been 16, because the construction was fixed.
right, I signed it December 7th, 2015, because that's when the board approved it. But then it was
That's what I
after
read.
that, and I think it was April, when they ultimately agreed and said that, I think I've got a memorandum from them saying, yeah, commencement date was April 1st of 2017. That's for East Winnebago 302 East Main Street, so that's,
17, yeah, so it was 16 when we finished.
Yeah.
We started talking to them at 15.
so we would have to look to see when the exact timeline, when that lease actually started. Did it start in 2016?
I think you're correct, in April of 17, they probably started talking to us in 15, we said, you gotta wait till we get our tower rehab done, and like, okay, and they continue doing their work, and then execution
So if that's,
took that time.
right, so if that's the actual date that we're looking at the lease, because that's when they started paying rent. Now, the lease could have been in effect before then. And that's what we have to look at, is when's the effective date of the lease? Because I don't have a signed copy with their signatures on it. That's something we have to find out. But that's what Mary can look at, and then I think that should go to
The public works committee,
Yeah.
It would, letting everyone know, although there's only one that's not on the Public Works Committee in this room, so, really do, just letting you know.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think that's something we definitely need to take a look at.
I would think some of it's just deployed. I mean, right now, these people are trying to increase coverage, not decrease coverage. They've already got a lot of sunk cost into that equipment, but again, it's certainly understandable that they might have to replace some equipment because that technology's all changing all the time.
Something else, and Chad, you may know this. When I was at IML a couple of years ago, they talked about 5G coming through. They talked about how carriers would have the legal right to take over village assets, meaning any of the streetlights, any other asset that we own as a public asset, they might have the right to actually put one of those little antenna on. And we can only charge a certain amount, which is not very much, and sometimes you cannot charge them if you don't have something in writing. And I don't know the specifics, I just remember that conference. I remember them talking about that and thinking, there goes our revenue off of the tower.
A public company can come in and just take over village assets?
There is a state statute that allows that. So I think that's something we need to look into. And again, I'm being very general. It obviously is a little more restricted than that, but the understanding is they have the right to access certain things because it's village publicly owned property. And we have very limited ability to control it and to set fees. So that's something that I may have in my notes, and that's something that we'll want to look at. So Mary, if you don't mind just reminding me, I can take a look at my notes and then we can get a Public Works. But I just wanted to get that out there to think about that, because that could be, if they have that ability and that's what they're looking towards, sometimes then they have the upper hand when it comes to negotiation, because they can say, well, we can just take it down and start putting it through the village. I think in Chicago and bigger cities, they're already doing that. They're already putting, like, every 100 feet, they've got a little antenna, and that's where your phones keep connecting to the 5G network.
Yeah, I guess we just gotta find out what the issues are and what the pluses and minuses are.
Sorry.
Greg, can you take it off?
Sorry.
You are fine.
That is it for Public Works.
Oh, good. I thought you were gonna say that's it for her.
Yeah, that's it.
Can I go home now?
Yes. All right.
I did look at the contract with Verizon, and on the very first page, it says that the term, and it was written in pen, began September 30th of 16.
Okay.
And then you signed it in December of 15, but then they witnessed it on September 30th of 16.
Thank you.
And we received our first payment in November of 17.
Because they were supposed to start paying in April of 17 and they never paid us. I remember, yes, we had to go after them and collect the back rent.
So 2026.
So 5 years, but that again I'm guessing it's 5 years from when they signed it is when the lease may be effective. Yeah, so thank you for finding that date. All right, thank you, Jeremy. Nothing from community development tonight, so we will go on to police committee.
Did one of you two want to talk about the cameras?
Yeah, that's fine. We've gone through this before about getting the security cameras for the building here. We finally made a purchase. We split it 3 ways through the different departments. As you can see in the corner up there behind you, that's a new camera that was installed. There's a new one here. A couple more in the back office. There's one in the front office here. It's already installed. We have some more to install out in front, but probably by late tomorrow afternoon, we'll have everything installed and everything operating.
Good. Thank you for getting that done. I know it's a long time in coming.
Thank you. That's it.
All right. We'll go on to finance.
Good evening, everybody. For finance here, we've got 2 items remaining. The first one is a resolution for the use of credit card points. This is coming from committee, and we've also discussed this at the full board as well. We've got a lot of credit card points. The totaling amount is, there's 133,174 points with a cash value of $1,325. And this resolution says that we are going to use it for office supplies.
And coming from committee,
That is
so we
correct.
do not need a second. Any discussion regarding the proposed resolution?
It's resolution number 2023-18R.
Sally, I guess I don't remember talking about this old motion by Elson. Did you come up with that after that, or did we talk about that finance that I forgot? So there was a different method in place to credit the points to the
Right.
employee fund, basically.
Originally, it was voted on to use it for EAP services, and we had a contractual agreement with a company that supplied those services, but then our health insurance offered it for no additional charge, so whatever date that was, we started using that and not paying anymore, and that's why those points built up.
Thank you. That connected the dots I needed to connect. Thank you.
Any other discussion? No additional discussion, roll call please.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. LaFever?
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Rourke?
Yes.
Mr. Ackerman?
All right, that's approved.
The second item is not coming from committee, so it will need to be seconded. We have discussed this as a full board as well. It is updating the purchasing policy to have the department heads, their spending limit is 5,000 or less. The reason we did this was the increase of the resolution, everything 5,000 and over, we would have a resolution for. And so it just made sense to move it up.
Right. And again, this is coming from the committee.
It is not coming from the
Oh, not, okay.
We need a second.
We have a second
I'll
to
second.
increase it, all right. Any discussion regarding raising the department head spending limit to $5,000 from its current level? No discussion, roll call please.
Mr. LaFever?
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Rourke?
Yes.
Mr. Ackerman? Mr. Graham?
Yes,
All right, and that's approved.
and that is it for finance.
Thank you. We'll go on to my items. First is appointment of Riley Sidney to the village board effective September 11th, 2023. Riley has been on zoning board. He moved to the village of Winnebago beginning of September a year ago. He had wanted to be on the village board, but you cannot be on a board in a municipality for an elected position unless you've lived here for a year. And so he fortunately was serving on the zoning board. He would like to serve on the village board. I think he would do well. So I'm seeking to appoint him so he can come to the next meeting and he would be eligible to serve. I don't know if anybody has any comment.
He grew up here, he went to high school here, for sure.
I don't know him personally, but I've heard pretty good things about him.
He said he's been concerned about, Village of Winnebago things the whole time. He said the last 7 years he's been paying attention to what's going on. He's a young man. And I truly believe that, he will do his best for the village. And I think sometimes it's good to get a broad perspective on the board, different viewpoints.
Well, I can tell you from the zoning point of view, he's only been on the zoning board for a short period of time, but he's been inundated with information and you can tell that he's read it all.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks very highly of somebody.
Yep, thank you for that, Mary. All right, so if there's no objection, then he will come to the board meeting, and we talked about it, and it would be at the normal part of the meeting where it would be when we go to new business. He would be appointed. Mike, if you don't mind staying, if you feel.
No, my intent was the end of the year until you got a full complement, so I'll stick around for a few more months and give you a chance to try to fill the extra spot.
Yep, thank you. All right, we'll move on to the next item. And that's the zoning ordinance text amendment. We had our public hearing at 5:55 tonight, and nobody showed up to comment on the zoning text amendment that was published, it was duly published. And this is the amendment where we are going from 7 zoning board members down to 5 zoning board members. And each zoning board member would serve a 5-year term. And so they would be,
And I do have an ordinance
oh, okay.
for that. There's a reason, the reason you're getting it now, and technically, it's changing changing the zoning board of appeals, and I'll explain to you why. Because it's just, I've been researching and researching this issue, and this is what we've had in the village, and it's pretty straightforward, but it just indicates that the zoning board of appeals is changing,
She
to
said
that
that
number.
original, correct?
Yeah, I still have it, yeah. I got several here. The long and short of it is this. In the village, we have had reference to the zoning board, the zoning board of appeals, zoning and planning commission. And the question has arisen over the years, what exactly does that mean? Are they different? Are they the same? Do they have to be the same? Do they have to be different? Unfortunately, the statute is not very clear at all. I've researched case law because it has always seemed very strange to me that we have a zoning board of appeals and that are the same people as the zoning and planning commission. And the terms are used interchangeably. What is provided for in our zoning ordinance currently is what is stated here, is that, we have a 7-member currently zoning board of appeals, and by statute, you may have that, that's what we adopted. Didn't say you have to have 7, that's why we can decrease it to 5. But I wanted to find out, well, who does what? Some municipalities, because I've talked to lawyers who represent Capron, McChesney Park, Freeport, and some other municipalities, and they have a conglomeration. In my mind, a zoning and planning commission is an entity that would bring in, when somebody has an interest in developing something, they come to the zoning and planning, talk about what they want to do, and at that point, they can give them ideas, give them copies of village ordinances, things of that nature. Then, when they want something like a variance or a special use permit, or zoning, they would go before the zoning board of appeals. What's confusing about that terminology, but it's just how the wording is that we think of appeals as you've already been to a body, they've given you an adverse decision, and now you want to appeal it. With the zoning board of appeals, it sometimes is that, but about 95% of the time, it's the things I talked to you about, the special use permit, the variance, that type of thing, the zoning recommendation. But it could be that your zoning official has made a determination to say, hey, you're going to build this, you have to use X material based on what our zoning ordinance says. And the person disagrees, they can go to the zoning board of appeals and appeal that decision. So that's hence why it's called a zoning board of appeals. The long and short of it is that, in my mind, we should have a zoning and planning commission that forms or does what I stated, and then a zoning board of appeals. The statute does not say one way or another, but I did find case law that where there was a situation where there was a complaint because the Planning and Zoning Commission, when it was published in the newspaper, said it was going to be before the Planning and Zoning Commission. And when it got to there, it was actually supposed to be before the Zoning Board of Appeals. But they were all the same members except for one. And the appellate court said, it doesn't matter. They've gotten their day in court, so to speak, quasi-court. They've gotten information before the people, so we're not going to change it on that technicality. Why that was important to me is that a court was recognizing that these two boards could potentially have the same people on them. That's what I was concerned about. Frank and I have always had the concern over the village president being on the zoning board of appeals, whatever you want to call it. Because when you don't like what the zoning board does, where do you come to the village board? Who's the tiebreaker on the village board? The village president, same person that has been there. But the reason I think over the years, and this was long before my time, but I think over the years, the reason the village president's been on the zoning board of appeals is because we do have provision for the village president to be on the zoning and planning commission, which I think over the years, the idea was village president knows about what's going on in the village. Isn't that a good person to have on there to kind of just get the conversation going? So, but now I think that it's probably best not to have the village president, and Frank isn't on there anymore anyway, just so it's got plenty of transparency. And it's always usually made up of citizens. Now, there are municipalities that, one case in point being Capron, they can't get anybody to serve on the zoning board, so they have the COW, the committee of the whole, serves as that function. Well, who's the committee of the whole? The board. And that's the same people that they then appeal to. And I think that their attorney recognizes that that could be an issue, but if nobody challenges it, they at least have some avenue for people to come forward and present their zoning thing. That's a long way around this ordinance, but I just thought I wanted to update you on that because of the fact that it makes me comfortable now that we can make this kind of ordinance, knowing that we can have the same people on the zoning board of appeals and the planning and zoning commission.
And when we researched this, our original zoning ordinance first set out that they were going to form a zoning and planning commission. That zoning and planning commission, I believe, included the village president. And then that zoning and planning commission then drew up the zoning ordinance. And the zoning ordinance had, okay, now we're going to have the structure of the zoning board of appeals, and then they selected people to serve. So the zoning board of appeals was generally going to be everybody on there, and then the zoning and planning commission would be everybody on the zoning board of appeals plus the village president. So that would have been a different group. But over time, it just kind of melded into the one. And so there was never a separate zoning and planning commission. We've tried to have a group of people available for development to come in. And really, we may want to start looking again at a zoning and planning commission to meet with these people so they can actually come to a formal meeting and say, this is what we plan to do. And that zoning and planning commission, made up of the zoning members, can make a recommendation. Then they go and do whatever, and then they come to the zoning board for whatever variances, special use permits, or zoning changes that they want. I think that would help the process even a little bit more. But we'll work on that down the line.
And the council that I talked to, their communities seem to like when they are the same people, just again, because they're small communities, not only because it's hard to get people, but then you have someone or a group of people who are invested in the whole thing. They know all the facts. So yes, there may be a meeting where they come to those same people as the planning and zoning commission and give them information, and then come back to them in a different capacity at the zoning board of appeals to then give another presentation. The one thing to remember is that for the planning and zoning commission, this isn't for the zoning board of appeals, but the people, and they generally are, but they have to be residents of the village or live within 1.5 miles of the village. That's per statute. So if you have the same people on both, then of necessity, people on the zoning board of appeals are going to be either village residents or live within 1.5 miles, because to be on the planning and zoning commission, you have to either a village resident or live within 1.5 miles.
Is that road miles or air miles?
Those are air miles. So you draw the line, going through fields, whatever you want to do. All right, so we've got that. So we have this zoning ordinance text amendment.
The only thing that needs to be filled in is the place that indicates on the second page that what it does is it adds a sentence to the one where we created it, and is saying that henceforth, from the passage of this ordinance forward, the number of zoning board of appeals members will be decreased from 7 to 5. This is on Article 2 on page 2, and maintain the provision for a 5-year term for each one that's appointed. So it just was because that section actually is what created the zoning board of appeals. So it didn't make sense without me putting this as a sentence at the end to say commencing with the effective date of this ordinance is when it will go from 7 to 5.
And we currently have 5 members on the zoning board, so there will not be anyone that's losing a position. So any, all right, so do we have a motion?
No, we don't have a motion
We need a
or a second.
I'll make a motion to approve the new ordinance for the zoning.
2023-07.
I'll second.
All right, we have a, first, we have a second. Any additional discussions this year? Yes, sir.
Any of them can be, actually, this is the original. But I got it kind of left.
That's right.
Coming in either way.
Any discussion? If not, roll call, please.
Mr. McKinnon,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Rourke,
Yes.
Mr. Ackerman, Mr. Graham,
Yes.
Mr. LaFever.
Yes.
That's approved.
So be it.
Yes.
Did you fill in that one? Let's make sure we are covered. Yeah.
Now are we done with ordinances?
Yeah, and I'll sign this right now. That's right. All right. We can move on to new business. We have the Safe Routes to Schools grant opportunity. I provided some information from before, just so you knew that we had applied for it before, and then it was rejected by the state, not because we did, they just had so many applicants that they felt other ones were worthier of being awarded funds at the time. We had spent quite a bit of time with the school district and park district and planning this along with people from Fair Graham, and we thought it was a pretty good proposal. But again, we did not get funding. That was what, 2016, Chad, or 2013?
I think it was more like 13.
Might have to go back further than that. It was my early
Or the
days.
email was according to your letter, it was 2013, when the survey went out, everything went out in 2014.
All right, thank you, Adam.
I read it. Was interested in it.
So now we have another opportunity, and unfortunately, it's a short time frame. I did ask Seth, and I know Seth is here listening, but I did ask Seth what the cost would be, and he said generally it'd be about $3,500 if the village did a lot of the work, and that is getting the parent surveys, getting the classroom tally sheets, letters of support, anything else that we need from the school. And that's part of what we need is the buy-in from the school to move forward with this, and also the park, possibly the park district, due to the fact that we may be looking at paths and walkways and things like that that may go through their property or hook up with their paths. If we just have Fair Graham do all of that for us and the village does not interact with them, it'd be about $6,000 to have them do the grant. And so I don't know if this is something, Chad, I don't know if you have some information as to maybe what we would do, if it's the same plan we had before, if there's,
It would be scaled back from the original scope that was what we were talking about in 2013 and 14, because some of the spots of work has been done, some of the improvements, like along Lida Street, and we were really near being awarded that back then. We were like very near. The board at the time said they would go for it again. We had some tough years along the way. We did financially budget a larger sidewalk program. So I'm adamantly behind going after this grant and being aggressive to try and get it.
Is there more money this time, or do we know?
right,
As far as on the grant, is there more available, or do we have any idea?
And what would our outlay participation be?
right, yeah. What do Seth or Chad, do you know what the village's portion would be? What, is it a matching grant 50/50 or?
It says $0 toward us.
Okay, so it's completely 100% funded by the government.
There was, and again, there's a couple different things that, go into memory, because I know my wife was active involved with this when our children were younger, and also we had the time where we applied to this grant, but in one of those instances, the school district was not strongly in support of it because they were concerned that they were going to lose revenue for transporting some of those students. Now, obviously, numbers may be significantly different now, and their availability for bus drivers and everything has changed dramatically, but, I know I do recall that's probably something we, certainly probably want to at least have a conversation of, that we're not going one direction that's totally contrary to another taxing district.
The main thing I think, Mike, was Greenlee, was a busing from Greenlee, because if you cross Cunningham,
Cunningham is considered a highway, and therefore you have to provide school transportation.
so if we had a safe route to cross Cunningham, which what we were planning, then it would take away funding for the busing of the students that are in Greenlee. And part of the issue is, yes, we have to be mindful of the school district, and the other thing is we have to be mindful of the people that cross Cunningham. I mean, I drive down Cunningham every morning and every night when I go to and from work, and there are people jogging, there are people biking, and I see them crossing Cunningham, and there's no cross. There's no crosswalk, there's nothing, no signage or anything to say, look out for pedestrians, and so, in my mind, it is a place where we need it, because we're trying to get them to the Prairie Path, we're trying to get them to the school in the Park District from Greenlee and Rush Farms, and across Cunningham, we need to have that type of signage.
Well, again, I don't disagree with you, but just to highlight, yes, it'd certainly be nice, depending on if you go to the plan that was drafted previously, from a selfish standpoint, that took a sidewalk all the way down along, Westfield all the way into Greenlee. And yeah, taking a walk at night, I'm walking on that street in the dark, it would certainly be nice to have a sidewalk,
But in hindsight, you guys got neighborhoods that have sidewalks, but you still have the village town that does not have sidewalks, and all the kids are always walking down the street. Kids over there are getting lost. I read it and it kind of got me fired up. Seeing a sidewalk or a bike path going down Westfield Road, why? When you have sidewalks down the neighborhood, why do they all walk down Westfield Road and you can walk through the neighborhood? So in hindsight, is you can walk throughout town here, and I live here in town, so I see all the kids, because they're walking from the schools, going home, on streets that don't have sidewalks.
School Street is a big one. When you come from the school where you have the crossing guard and you have the lights, and they come onto School Street to come over to the old part, Swift Street, Pecatonic.
You got a bike path, but then there's nothing else.
Right, you can't, there's no sidewalk to walk on. And when you're conveying that many students across and trying to get them home, and they're walking in the street because that's the only place to walk, and anyone that jogs, anyone that rides a bike, they're all right there in the street together. People are using, I understand what you're saying, but I think we need to start somewhere. I think we need
signage on Cunningham. I think anybody can agree to that. If you want to put signage in for them coming across from Greeley or Rush Farms across, that's one thing. I think we probably could absorb that out of our own fund to make that, but just in general for 23 grand.
Would there be like a pedestrian light
I
or?
don't know, Chad, if we looked at having like a yellow flashing light or anything like that.
We haven't on Cunningham, but I do want to back up. Some of the criteria, the then safe route to school criteria drove some of the decisions of where the sidewalk setting. And I know, because I was involved with it, that we wanted to include all of the old inner part of town. Swift Street, School Street, Benton Street. We didn't probably include Pecatonica at the time, but honestly, I don't even want to say this, but I'm going to say it. It was board movement that stopped the progression of us being awarded the first opportunity. There was board action that voted no for matching funds that stopped that project from moving forward. We then went after it a second time, and the funds, we were denied due to LMI and other reasons. And that's all by memory, but I do remember being, and there was a ton of work that went into that project that the village did have to pay for, because it had to be to a certain design level, but there was criteria of it then. That may not be the wishes of the village now, but going after the grant, going after the grant, it can be based on linear footage of sidewalk and where the population is. We had to serve a route from Westfield. And like Adam's saying, we have Prairie Hill has sidewalks through it and bike paths. So we could augment the project if chosen, as long as we meet the criteria of the grant. And then likewise, this is the first year, this budget year, that we've refunded the sidewalk program. And Sally, myself, and the Public Works Committee want to fund it a whole lot stronger in the future and rebuild and implement sidewalks in the whole town. So, I just wanted to put that out there, but again, Cunningham Road, anything we do with Cunningham Road is a county highway, and it's all gotta go through the county highway, so even if we had the money to do it, we still have to get their blessing. That being said, when we went after the grant previously, they were one of the advocates that were for it, and it was different administrative team, and I know verbally between then and now, the change in administration has verbally committed that they would be behind this and would not, I don't want to say the word fight us, but that's what it came down to at that time was, there was a point in time when the school said, no, we're not in favor of losing our funding to bus across the way. And now that threshold, the difference in the funding is not worth hurting the village's pedestrian pathways over. That's what was verbally told me in the last 2 years.
And for letters of recommendation, we would look to the school district, we would look to the park district, we would look to the county. Those are the ones that we'd be working with anyway, so we'd want them to give a letter of recommendation so it shows that they really are supporting what we're trying to do.
And the board knows I'm never like to spend money willfully, but these grant opportunities, when they come with short windows, they're really only for the people that are serious about conducting the work. That's why they punch them out with these short windows. And
can we put this together quickly enough, between you and Seth? I mean, you might, I don't know if you need Sally for any numbers, but are we going to be able to put this together and get it submitted?
Seth and I had a debriefing conversation last week when I got back, and if we get movement, if we get traction this evening, we think we can get it to done in time for the next board meeting. With renewed numbers, a revisit of the scope to make sure we're meeting all the criteria. This is how some of these grants come. They come with a very short window, and some of the cities got to brush off these plans. I didn't come tonight with what we had already invested, but I'm pretty certain, let's shoot from the hip number, we already invested over $25,000 into this project historically.
And this item is on the agenda for Public Works on Wednesday as well.
I see
I
Seth's
think
on
there
this.
would be room in the budget in community development for the engineering costs.
So we really need a decision tonight from the board as to whether to expend those funds or not. Unless you want to wait to hear what Public Works or whomever has to say, but I would say tonight would be the better opportunity.
Did we say it was 6,000?
It would be 6,000 if we have Fair Grant do all of the class tally sheets and everything with the school. If we are able to do that with them, it would be 3,500.
So we can make a motion right now to oh no, it's under new business, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, never mind.
So again, this is gonna be one of those where we just need to get feeling of the board to move forward, and then
I guess with the short timeline, I think we're better off just having Fair Grant kind of do it.
Yeah.
Do it all.
Thank
I
you.
think we can help, Chad can help, whereas you didn't fill the blanks, but if we're talking, I think, was it short at the end of the month, or is it end of month?
I think it's October.
October 2nd.
October 2nd.
Okay, so we're only 6 weeks out from that.
You only have one board meeting.
Exactly, so I think we're better off just give them.
I think so too. I think Fair Grant can do that for us, and Chad is able to assist as well. So if that's the case, I would still want the committee to discuss this and make a recommendation, and then we would actually vote on it in September. Basically authorizing, because I'll go ahead and sign it because I can sign it, and then we'll just have the board validated.
Jay, would you say it would seem fundamental that the vast majority of the activity would be considered infrastructure?
Yes.
So, if you're talking, whatever we're investing on the grant application for the opportunity for upward of $250,000, regardless of, where you ended up putting the sidewalks, they're needed all over the place.
So it seems to me that the board would be in favor of doing this if it came to a vote. So Seth, if you can forward to me any paperwork that you need me to sign, and then copy Mary and Jeremy and Chad. Anybody else? needs to have, Sally, maybe, Sally
Yes,
Bennett?
please.
And then just text me too, if you could, so that I know to check my email. And then I'll,
Yep, no problem. I'll get that, we'll get a proposal put together then, based on the full scope. I'll get it sent over to you.
okay, sounds good. Thank you, Seth. Any questions for Seth? All right. Thanks again, Seth, for staying on top of this for us.
No problem. Thank you, guys.
All right. The next item we have is IML Annual Conference in Chicago. I don't know if anybody is planning on going. I will be going Thursday and to the Friday session, but I'll be coming back Friday night. So if anybody wants to go, again, it's good, especially for those that are newer. It's a really good opportunity to take hour-long sessions and learn all about how to operate municipal government. So if you are gonna go, I don't know when the window is, but I think it's the end of
I think
August.
the block rate for the hotel ends Friday of this week.
Okay,
A lot of times they extend that though, depending, for a little bit, depending on what the number is.
okay.
So just email me, I'll take care of
What
it.
was the date of that again? The
21, 22, 23 of September. I have it on my calendar, I just can never go.
All right, next, I have some more things for new business. Does anyone else have anything for new business?
I do, but you might have the same thing on, I don't know. I noticed that I asked to put on the agenda the village administrator,
Okay,
timeline for a village administrator. I know, I think Sally and Kelly are supposed to be working on that, a list of criteria, is what they were looking for. But if we're looking to get somebody in here in January, we probably gotta get that buttoned up, stuff pushed out. So applications coming in October, November, we could do some review of applications or whatnot, and then hiring in December for effective in January. Tentative timeline, right? So all month of, let's say September and October of advertising for it. And instead of advertising it, Gazette, let's spend some funds and see what we can get out there for a pool of candidates, potential candidates.
and do we know, I don't know if you know what you want to put out there for the starting salary, or range, I mean, we talked
We
about.
could do a range that could cover the basis of everything, But I believe our biggest thing is timeline. If we really want this truly to happen for the first of the year, we gotta get our ducks in a row.
The status is, Kelly and I asked Rachel to put all those job descriptions into one document, and then Kelly's got her copy and I have my copy, and we've been red penning it, but we haven't put it all the way together yet. We can do that even before the board meeting and, offer it up there for criticism and review.
Yeah, that sounds good. And then, do you want to talk about who's going to be on the committee to do the interviews? Do you want to do that tonight? Do you want to wait till we get the?
I mean, we can wait. I just want to make sure we're kind of getting a timeline, at least for advertisement. We can figure that out at the board meeting prior to interviews. But we should probably have say deadline applications by the end of October or first week of
And if
November.
you want, we can talk about our admin team too. I mean,
That's fine.
Sally, if you don't mind just writing that down as another item we can talk about. I mean, first we got the step pay, but then secondly, we can talk about that a little bit more.
I wouldn't mind being on that interview team.
Yeah, I think that's a good if you were.
And I guess it probably goes hand in hand too, is, when it is being discussed, if that were implemented, what does the overall structure look like? Because, that helps you figure out, where the salary should be and what the overall financial impact is gonna be.
Anything else on that topic? Another item that just came up is the village commercial electrical rates. We have an aggregation of electricity for the village residents, residential and small business. We also have one just for the village of Winnebago for its commercial account. And it's for the village itself for the operation of the well houses. And we received some favorable, seems like it's favorable pricing. And as you know, it's a commodity that changes daily, and the current rate that came out today, I think this is the one for today, shows that Dynegy would be the best one to go with. We can do a 12-month agreement, a 24-month agreement, a 36-month agreement, or a 48-month agreement. And with Dynegy, if we do a 12-month, it would be 5.762 cents per kilowatt hour, which is the lowest of any provider. If we do a 24-month, it'd be 5.901 per kilowatt hour. If we do 36, it's 6.066. And for 48 months, it's 6.154. So it goes up a little bit the longer you extend out, because they don't know what the rates are going to be 2-3 years from now. We had been at 5.486 cents under our current contract, which is expiring. The current ComEd rate is 7.161 cents for this type of program. So these bids are well under the current ComEd rate. Usually energy costs go up. We experienced that not too long ago. They typically don't go way down. And so my thought process is we probably want to lock in for a longer rate. And Chad, I don't know what your thoughts are. If you want to, if you have in mind a 2-year staying under 6 cents, or if you want to go 3 or 4 years. I know you negotiated some of these before.
No, it's been pretty volatile, so I don't have a real educated opinion any longer. It's been really volatile.
Yeah.
I think 2 years is probably pretty reasonable.
I worry because the Village of Winnebago right now, we're paying 8 cents. If we had gone for a 3-year lock-in for residential, we'd still be paying 6.3, 6.4. I had lobbied for that with all the other area village presidents that went into it with us. And initially they said, yes, they wanted 3. And then one of them spoke up and said, I don't want to get locked in, I want to do 2. And some other ones then started going that way, and we locked into 2. And now we're, instead of paying 6.4, we're paying 8 point whatever. I have concerns usually, and I didn't look at this contract, but typically when ComEd falls below our contracted rate, we're allowed to opt out and take the ComEd rate with no charge.
I think the village program for the residents allows that. Commercial seldom does it allow that.
And that's,
You take a commercial rate, you're not going back to the.
So what was the 2-year rate again?
the 2-year rate is 5.901.
And the
And
4-year
the
rate?
4 is 6.15 cents. So it's very little. What you're hoping is that
You don't have a 2 cent, whatever,
Right.
over the next 4
you hope
years.
it's not going to die. When you lock in, you hope it doesn't dive down.
I don't think it's ever gonna dive down, it's just gonna
Well,
keep
this
getting
was a weird period of time though, right? We haven't seen rate increases like this, have we?
You haven't, but the problem is.
We were back in the 7s, way back when we started the aggregation. We were back in the mid to high 7s.
There was a period of time rates came down, it happens on natural gas, it happens on electric, if you, in the natural gas side, if you have a very, warm winter or whatever, you're fine, and then it shifted to the fact that you were more impacted by the summer demand on natural gas to supplement electricity when they, were decommissioning coal plants. My gut feel is as much as they're pushing on the alternate energy sources or whatever and shutting down your standard coal-fired plants and not authorizing any nuclear, I really don't see electric rates going down significantly in the future.
So
From the standpoint of the administrative part and paying the bill, 2 years goes really fast. And I think if we could lock in our budget at that 6.1, it seems to make sense to me.
My gut's telling me to lock in on 4 years. Especially if you're only talking, even if you're talking 20% difference between them both, okay, that's a lot different, but.
it's very minimal, and the idea is you're locking it at that level amount that we know we can afford.
Because I know our, what we're gonna get for our water rate increases are gonna decrease a certain percentage. You know, we hit hard at the beginning. For our first, 4 or 5 years we hit it hard, and it's supposed to table off towards the end there. And the way everything's gone up the last couple of years, I don't know how it's gonna look next year, you know? Are we just gonna plateau and be in deficit again? So I think we just stick with 4 years, and hopefully we can shoot underneath the radar a little bit on that.
Again, we just found out about this. We didn't have the opportunity to have it on the agenda. The idea would be I could sign this agreement if I know that that's what the board's
And we gotta make another meeting for 2 weeks from now to make some of this stuff happen.
Well,
This is today.
I mean, I have to sign it tomorrow basically, because it may change and they may withdraw it, because I've seen that happen where sometimes they'll give it to you and then the next day they withdraw it. Because then they realize, hey, we just got new information and we don't want to extend that out. But this has been there for about the last week and it may change, so I.
Yeah, well, it's increased slightly from when you sent the email last week.
Okay.
No, we can just always affirm it.
Right, and then affirm it at the September board meeting, so.
Then I'm thinking the 4-year for 6-1, so it sounds like there's a consensus here.
That's the top one.
Correct.
And that would be with Dynegy. They're by far the next closest one is Constellation at 6.234, and then Direct Energy is 6.958. AEP is 6.556, so Dynegy would be the lowest one. And Dynegy, you know, services a lot of different municipalities, I believe, in the state of Illinois, so they're a known quantity. All right, so I'll go ahead and sign that service agreement when it comes to me, and then we'll ratify that on the September meeting, so you can just make sure that it's on the agenda next time, please. The next item I have is, we have an IGA with the County of Winnebago. We are one of the municipalities that's in the IGA for the public safety answering point system, the 911 system. And our contract, our agreement is through September 30th of 2023. On October 1st, 2023, it's scheduled to go up 6%. You may remember that as a whole, the municipalities, we fought to keep the 911 system at the county instead of Rockford taking it over. I helped with the negotiations with the county on behalf of the municipalities. And we settled on $500,000 combined for every municipality except for Rockford to help the county. Their budget was like $1.79 million for it. We give them $500,000 for the dispatch and call taking.
Did you say 6%?
6%.
Thank you.
Gino Galuzzo, who was the attorney for the municipalities, and I and James Richter from Machesney Park, the village administrator, we met with Gary Caruana and Steve Schultz from the county, and then Deputy Sheriff a couple weeks ago to talk about this. And it looks like their costs would be at least 6% that it's risen. We're going to be asking for documentation. And then at our next PSAP board meeting, we'll present that information to the other municipalities as to what the actual increases are. So that 6% is really, seems like a fair number, but we're going to look at it to see if that justifies and end up with a particular number. But our increase then will be 6%. And Steve asked me how he should build the municipalities, and I told him it should be 6% across the board. We have it based upon call volume, but we don't know the latest call volume. So that's an internal thing between the municipalities, how we divided up that $500,000, which is now going to be $530,000. And we will discuss that. But for right now, Sally, we need to budget the amount of, it's going to be, instead of.
So Frank, in that contract, there was going to be an increase in October of this year already. 6%. So it's 6% higher than that?
No, it's going to be that 6% increase. We put that 6% in there because I didn't want the IGA to just stop. So we negotiated that 6%, and then every year after that, it's 5% if we don't change it.
So that is what is in the budget, because I followed that.
Perfect. So right now, the county is poised to bill everybody at 6%. So that will mean that we're gonna be paying, instead of $4,492.30 every quarter, we'll pay $4,761.84 every quarter. So it'll go up $250 each quarter, so it's gonna be just over $1,000 difference. So I just wanted everyone to be aware of that for budgeting. I'm glad you already put that in there. After we negotiate, if it does come down, great. If it stays the same, well, fine. We've already budgeted for that, but I just wanted everyone to know where we're at with that. Good job. All right, next item that I have is, we just got an email from Greg Haynes of HMI Inc. He's the one that did our original hotel feasibility study and then did the update, and he sent the update. So I emailed everybody with it. You may not have even had a chance to look at it, but I wanted you to get it and just take a look at it. Okay, so if you see some things, then what I would do is probably email me and email Kelly, and we'll just kind of gather any concerns that you might have from it. And I made sure everybody that's sitting, I made sure Jeff and Nick got it, and Chad, you got it, because there may be things in there that you guys will look at, and Sally, of course, just so you guys have a chance to look at it and see from your perspective, is there anything that maybe needs to be corrected in there. So, but once we have a chance to look at it, then we can talk more about it, and that may be something where community development may want to talk about it, but I think we just need to kind of go over it as a board as well, so we understand what it says and what we're going to do with it. Anybody have anything else for new business? If there's nothing else, motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor, let's say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, it's 7:13.
Okay. All right, I'm going to stop the recording.